Welcome everyone to this lightning talk, what hummingbirds and sunbirds can tell us about design thinking for agile practitioners. My name is Martin Jewiss. I run The Familiar, a human-centered design and tech consultancy. We only have 10 minutes, so let's jump straight in. And we'll take a look at a hummingbird and a sunbird. At first sight, they appear to be similar. Their main food is nectar. They both have long beaks to reach nectar deep inside flowers. They're both small and active with high energy lifestyles. And because of that, they both need to feed every 10 to 15 minutes. They also have some differences. Hummingbirds usually have straight beaks. Some birds have curved beaks. Hummingbirds can hover or perch to reach nectar in flowers. Some birds can only perch. We find hummingbirds in the Americas, and sunbirds are found in Africa, Asia, and Australasia. Now, you might think they share a common ancestor bird and over thousands of generations have evolved their differences. This would be classic evolutionary theory. In fact, it's the opposite. They have completely different ancestors. And over time, hummingbirds and sunbirds have developed similar characteristics in total isolation from each other. They're still growing closer together, in fact. This is the theory of convergent evolution. It can happen as a response to similar pressures and problems that different species have to overcome when living in similar but completely separate environments. Now, I see the same pattern with agile and design thinking. They have different origins, but in response to similar pressures, they've evolved similar values and approaches. The Agile Manifesto was born out of the belief that software development could and should be managed better. Amongst other things, it was a response to uncertainty and complexity in the development process. Design thinking is a response to how designers might address the uncertainty of complex or wicked real-world problems. Those problems that are difficult to judge with a simple right or wrong, or so complex they might defy definition even. So what is design thinking? It's a human-centered approach to finding solutions which balance what people need and value with what is technologically feasible and what is economically and strategically viable for an organization. We'll now look at some similarities. They demonstrate how well aligned agile and design thinking really are. I'll highlight just a few as we're pressed for time. So for both of them, people are at the heart of the activity. Both agile and design thinking seek to maximize value for people, customers, or users, however you want to define it. They both use iterative processes. They break large problems into smaller parts. They find solutions for the smaller parts, and eventually you have a solution for the whole. It's possible to run iterations on a regular cadence every couple of weeks, for example, whether we're talking design thinking or agile. They both value continuous learning through testing, validation, and reflection. So they both have feedback loops. And as we've already seen, both are approaches to deal with complex solutions or problems. Now, if we look at the differences, we can begin to see where agile and design thinking can add value to each other. Again, I'll highlight just a few. So frameworks. Agile is intimately linked with established frameworks such as Scrum or Kanban. Design thinking still emphasizes a fluid approach. There are frameworks that are beginning to emerge, but they're much less mature. Metrics. Agile methodologies have simple and sophisticated metrics to measure and communicate activity or status. I'm thinking of things like work in progress, cycle time, lead time, forecasting, flow, throughput. Design thinking has few, if any, well-defined metrics, and I think that's partly because of its fluid nature. Visualization of status. Agile methodologies have established tools to visualize and communicate activity and status. I'm thinking Kanban boards or burn down charts, for example. Design thinking lacks any standard visualization tools to communicate status or outcomes to a wider team, an organization, or other stakeholders. So how might we integrate agile and design thinking? Well, I think they can be integrated in different ways to different extents, and we can choose the most appropriate level of integration based on the project and the context. In some situations, a waterfall approach, separate activities, might actually be appropriate. I'm thinking of organizations running innovation initiatives or strategic experiments for new products or services, even internal transformations. There's a dual track approach where a discovery team of product owner, designers, and specialists might validate customer requirements. Their output could populate the delivery team's backlog with high quality validated user stories. In this approach, I think feedback from the delivery team should also make its way back to the discovery team, although this isn't mentioned in any of the literature I've read. I also hesitate at any approach which can lead to silos. We might consider discovery sprints or spikes. So a team might use a discovery sprint at a specific time to answer a high risk or a complex question about the product or service they're working on. A design thinking approach to discovery sprints could be really valuable. An interdisciplinary product team with an owner, possibly with help from external partners and customers, could be a great approach for this. We might consider small steps and experiments. So integrating a design thinking mindset into an existing team, they could work well for interdisciplinary or cross-functional teams. Specific design thinking activities might add value to the team toolbox. For example, a design thinking method like Activates, with the whole team ideating solutions for specific user stories, or involving everybody on the team in simple, quick user research or testing. So what conclusions can we make? Well, both agile and design thinking are being adopted more broadly in organizations. They both have potential to answer business critical questions and solve high stakes problems. At a team level, you might try out some design thinking techniques at a pace that works for you. For example, using research methods to validate user stories against customer needs, or consider a discovery sprint if you have a complex problem to solve, or consider an ideation session for the whole team to collaboratively explore solutions to problems. Agile and design thinking are so well aligned in their aims. I think there's a fantastic opportunity to integrate the approaches further. And with that, we could see some real improvements for our customers, for our organizations, and for our teams. So a few final words. A really big thank you to the producers for working so hard backstage, and a big thank you to the organizers for putting on such a great conference. Please do connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter. You can also download some free design thinking resources from our website. We've got idea cards for use in ideation sessions. We've got a double diamond poster for use with the idea cards. We've also got an Activates exercise that you can download to help you with sketching and ideation. They're all free to download from the website. I'd love your feedback on this session, and I'd also love to hear about any ideas or experience that you may have combining Agile with design thinking. So thank you all for listening, and please do ask any questions that you may have in the Q&A session, which is coming up. Thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you so much, Martin, for the talk. I think you called out some really important points there around things like breaking down silos, that kind of overlap. I really like that visualization of the Venn diagram as well to show those how they can work together in terms of agile and design thinking. We do have a couple of questions, so we'll start with the first one. Can you describe how the Active 8 approach you mentioned works?
Yes, I think some people may have heard of it as Crazy Eights, but we had a bit of pushback from the name, so we actually came up with a different name that is actually more appropriate to what it does, and it's really just about getting those initial ideas that are rattling around in people's heads down on paper, without them self-censoring, because we all tend to come up with ideas, and then before we actually get it out, we can we can actually say, oh no, that's no good. Oh no, there's a problem with that. Where actually, if you just get it down on paper and then you share it with other people, it can spark conversations, it can generate new ideas. So it's really just about that uncensored, unfiltered, get everything onto paper. It's very quick. It's 8 minutes, 8 boxes. You would already have sort of defined a subject or a problem that you're trying to figure out, and then everybody just goes for it. 1 minute per idea. You do some sort of a sketch, and when we say sketch, it can even be just writing down a name or something. It's just something on paper. And then at the end, I'd like to take it a little bit further after that and get people to build on other people's ideas. But the actual Activate approach is pretty like, great, we've got all these ideas down, we've captured them, now let's start working with them, building on them and refining them.
Sounds great. And would that be the whole cross-functional team, like regardless of their drawing ability or things like that? There'd be the whole team with it.
Absolutely, and that's why it's really important to say it's not about the quality of sketching or your artistic ability. It's all about quantity over quality, and it can be a scribble, it can be a couple of words, it can be anything, and typically afterwards you'd then have people sort of annotating those things a bit more so that you can actually communicate and sort of share the idea. But yeah, it's for everybody.
Absolutely, yeah. So thank you for the question there. And just maybe one more question, Martin. And this is something I often struggle with because there's such a plethora of information out there around design thinking. Are there any good resources you'd recommend as go-to if people want to learn more about design thinking?
There are, yes, and you're absolutely right. Design thinking means so many things to so many different people, and really sort of, you might be talking about two completely different things but using the same name. I personally like a lot of the information that's put out by IDEO. They didn't. They will say themselves they didn't invent design thinking. It actually stretches back to the 1930s. You can trace back the results. And there was a lot of work done in the 70s, but in the 90s, IDEO sort of picked up a lot of that work that was being done about these really complex problems, and sort of evolved this approach to how do we tackle problems? How do we come up with solutions? How do we make sure that those solutions are actually meet the needs and the desires of the people we're solving them for? So they do have a blog. I think it's called designthinking.ideo.com. And it's a really good introduction to what design thinking is and how they approach it.
Cool. No, thank you. Good recommendation there. Martin, before we let you go, I think you called out a couple of resources. How can people find out about some of the tools I think you mentioned there at the end of your talk?
Right. Yes. We actually have some resources that are just available to download. So is there any way I can post up a couple of links onto the screen or in the chat?
Yeah. So if you want to just post it in the chat there, yeah, we'll get it on the screen.
Okay. Right. There's a couple there. They should be coming up in a couple of minutes.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, they're our resources and they're available for free. And if anybody sort of wants to talk about them and sort of, okay, so what does this do? Then yeah, we're more than happy to sort of guide you through them, talk you through how you could use them.
Sorry, Martin, I think I just dropped off there. So I think you've shared the resources as well. So yeah, we'll share those out with our community as well on Twitter. So yeah, definitely something I'm going to have a look at as well. Martin, anywhere people can contact you if they have follow-up questions on your talk?
Yes, let me just see again. There's a couple of spots here. LinkedIn is probably the best one. I'm most active on LinkedIn, so yeah, if people want to get in touch with me there, then that's great. And as I was saying, if people download the resources and they, oh, what's going on with this? How do I use this? Get hold of me on LinkedIn, and we can tell you, okay, this is how you'd use it. This is what it might be good for, and equally, well, this is where you consider something else. It's all about the right tool for the right context or the right job.
Absolutely, yeah. I think the context is definitely good to
Oh
call
yeah,
out as well. So Martin, we'll finish up there. Thanks a million again for your
thank
time
you.
today and for your talk, and we hope to see you again soon.
Absolutely, thank you very much for having me. It's been great.
Great. Thanks. Bye
Cheers.
bye.